I'm not trying to be sexist, but alright, hello everyone. Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you for supporting my first video if you watched it. As you can see, the background behind me has changed because I am now back in Singapore. Previously, I was in Sydney on exchange. I chose this topic because I know a lot of us are very unsure of where we stand here. It's quite a sensitive topic here in Singapore. For a lot of us, at least in my experience, with reference to more guys than girls, it can be quite a torturous experience for us. It feels like we're trying to step over a field full of landmines when it comes to talking about gender, when it comes to talking about feminism. So I just like to weigh in and talk a little bit about what I think are misconceptions about feminism. I'm gonna do a disclaimer. I'm not trying to say that these are the definitive ways of looking at issues of gender, of ideas about feminism. These are just things that I've reflected on based on my studies in sociology. In no way am I qualified. I have not graduated from university. I'm just trying to share what I've studied and share some of my views as well, because I think we are slowly moving towards dealing with issues like sexual harassment, issues of rape and all that. So, misconception number one. Someone who supports feminism immediately hates guys. And when I mean hate guys, it means they just hate the entire male species. They think we're all trash. They think that we all deserve to go to hell because of the way we are. The first thing we need to recognize is that feminism is an ideology. And what do I mean by an ideology? I mean it's a certain particular system, a certain way of thinking that people attempt to embody. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they are perfectly able to approach it. A lot of people who try to preach feminism, who try to say they're feminists, at times do not actually effectively come across as feminists or stay true to some of the practices and beliefs that come out of feminism. And the second important thing about feminism as an ideology is that it is not a single ideology. Feminism has many different trains of thoughts, has many different approaches, many different ways of looking at feminism. And I would argue that a lot of mainstream feminist thought does not agree that men are essentially bad. They're not trying to say that particular people are inherently bad, they're inherently evil. But in terms of an ideological level, a lot of guys, a lot of men are promoted to think and act a certain way. So the question of blame always comes into the picture at this point. Should we blame the guy for acting a certain way, or do we blame the system? And this is a very divisive point, but in terms of how we understand how it happens, we're not trying to say that men are inherently bad, they are incapable of change. And it's for that reason that obviously I do approach feminist thought, because I think that I'm capable of change. I think that I am able to help promote gender equality in a way that's healthy, in a way that's beneficial to all. And there's so many forms of feminist thought that support this idea that men are in a way restricted too. We're meant to be a certain way that we might not agree with. For example, the idea that men need to be as physically able as possible, that all of us need to be physically strong, all of us need to be able to overpower our enemies. And I'm not trying to discredit any guys that like to be physical or like to be big and muscular, but the argument is there that a lot of us are coerced into it, and we're made to believe that this is the only way a guy has to be. And we arrive at the term toxic masculinity, which is basically particular traits and behaviors and values that we internalize as men because we think that is the way a man has to be. Why do we have to be so good at sport? Why do we have to constantly be mean to women? Why can't we just be friends with them? Why do we have to just reduce women to how they look, to their body image? Can we view them on a more personal level, on a more intimate and emotional level? Are we able to be in touch with our feelings? Because a lot of the time, ideas of masculinity revolve around being cold, being simply hyper-rational. There's so many ways that we can consider that guys can actually benefit from feminist ideas. If only we didn't treat feminism as a bad word, as something we should completely avoid. Okay, this brings us to the second misconception, which is that women immediately are the good people as well. We can't essentialize all women that they promote ideas of feminism, because we go back to the idea that feminism is an ideology, it's ideas and beliefs. It doesn't belong to a particular person or group of people. It's not surprising that I encounter a lot of people who identify as female that do not agree with feminism. They feel that things are fine the way they are, either because they are able to fit the mold of what is masculinity. They're able to say like, I'm physically able, I can keep up with the guys, so why can't other girls do it too? Why can't they just follow these standards that we've set in place? And once again, not trying to mean any offense, I'm just trying to reflect this idea. And this brings me to the next big assumption, that anyone who identifies as feminist or is trying to put forth feminist ideas is definitely 100% an effective feminist. This is such a huge assumption that has been detrimental to any positive feminist ideals to really come through. Once again, we go back to the idea that feminism is not one particular train of thought. There are several trains of thought within feminism. And in this case, not all of these trains of thought can be considered beneficial to society. And in a way, it might cause more confusion, might warp ideas, and also, if their own self-interests, might accidentally distort what it means to be feminist. I'm referring to the initial stages of feminist thought called white feminism. This very particular branch of feminism, at first thought, it was trying to push for all women's rights, but in the end, it was not considering other factors such as social class, such as race. For example, in terms of beauty products, you know how we have a lot of whitening creams, even in particular countries where it is multiracial and there are people of various skin colors. And because the ideal beauty standard is that of a white skin, because the image of the white woman is idolized as the perfect way of looking. Suddenly, women of color or women of a different race have to conform to the standard. And in the end, who benefits? Only women of a specific skin color or of a specific ethnicity. So it kind of shows how particular branches of feminism are good in terms of intention, but sometimes fail to deliver in terms of its goal, which is equality for all women. And another dimension of thinking about effective feminism is how it is branded, how it is marketed in media. What I'm talking about here is this new trend in a lot of Hollywood movies that's trying to promote feminism in a particular way. And I hear so much backlash against feminism in general because of these movies. I think one example is definitely Captain Marvel. Even the setup towards the movie was emphasized that the lead character is a female actress. And in the end, in the movie, spoiler alert, Captain Marvel is this super overpowered being that no one can match. When I discussed with people about the movie, a lot of them said that this is why feminism is bad. They're trying to portray women unrealistically as so much better than men. And in my head, I'm like, you're making so many assumptions about what feminism is, that this movie perfectly portrays feminism, which it doesn't. I'd also argue that the way the show was marketed really set it up for failure in terms of promoting feminist ideals, because a lot of marketing now is in your face about feminism, and there's this certain element which goes back to the first assumption that guys are trash. The guy is always some sneaky male figure who manipulates the female lead character or something. It makes men slowly begin to internalize this idea that feminism is bad for them. In a feminist society, there's no room for men. And I make the argument that Captain Marvel is an example of ineffective branding for feminism, because I can argue that an entire series of Japanese film from a certain studio called Studio Ghibli has been promoting feminist ideas for the longest time, and no one said anything, no one's made any noise or issues about it in at least the Eurocentric world, and in Singapore as well. He makes a lot of lead characters, a lot of key characters female, and he kind of subtly portrays the idea that a lot of them are more capable than the stereotypes that we are so familiar with in terms of what a woman should be according to patriarchal lines. You could argue that Hayao Miyazaki does not do it perfectly. He might not even be a feminist in terms of academic thought, in terms of identifying as one, but his methods do exactly that. To be an effective feminist, you do not necessarily have to constantly identify as one. You don't necessarily have to go around emphasizing that what you are doing is feminist. Because for one thing, if you're not doing it right, you're bringing issues of gender inequality to a higher level, because people are internalizing that feminism can be pretty toxic if it's not done right and it's not helpful to anyone. Now, I'm not trying to discourage anyone from their efforts. Once again, this is just my own opinion, my own take on it. I'm not trying to mansplain as well. And let's talk a little bit about the assumption that feminist thought does not agree with statistical facts. For example, case in point, if women are as good as men, how come all the men have the higher paying jobs? Doesn't that kind of reveal some kind of truth about this? Or the fact that, men get raped too, men experience sexual harassment too. Within the present system, within our current ideology, what is happening is that women are already disadvantaged. They've been disadvantaged for quite some time now. So if you refer to current statistics in terms of employment, what you are basically showing is a result of these inequalities. Within feminist thought, at least. It's not going to change overnight either. So relying on statistical evidence can be a very dodgy way of explaining your way out of feminist ideals. If we're talking about incidences of male rape or any kind of sexual violence, current feminist thought is in no way arguing that this can't happen. And in fact, a lot of feminist thought actually supports the idea that sexual violence can happen to anyone. And this is because they believe that acts of violence, acts of aggression, origin from masculinity in terms of the ideology, and not in terms of every guy is masculine, is the ultimate form of masculine. Any guy will experience masculinity in different ways to different degrees, and as such, some of them will be motivated more towards sexual violence if they are the embodiment of toxic masculinity, that they are physically dominating, they have to be sexually active. And unfortunately it does happen, and yes, this is a terrible thing, but feminist thought does not reject this idea. In fact, it reinforces the idea that male rape and male sexual violence can and will happen as long as we internalize these ideas of toxic masculinity, as long as we allow it to be perpetuated within our system. And in the same vein of this overprivileging of the biological argument, a key point to remember is that men may not be necessarily these overt sexual beings that are unable to control their urges. Yes, it is a common excuse or a common reason that a lot of guys give for being sexually overpowering or causing sexual harassment. But does that mean that it is the explanation, that it is always the excuse that it happens? I don't think so, based on what I have learned, what a lot of people have learned and know, which is we tend to overprivilege the biological argument, and we forget that all around us there are so many cultural triggers, so many triggers from the media that reinforce the idea that guys have to be sexually active. For them to be successful men, they have to conduct themselves in a way that is detrimental to women, and that men get status from being sexually active. So yes, this is all I have for today, because I am a student and I do not have that much time. I hope that this was beneficial for a lot of y'all, and I hope that no one took offense at what I said. I am genuinely just trying to help in terms of the current situation when it comes to sexual violence and sexual harassment within my university and within Singapore in general. I do genuinely believe that No one is essentially bad, no one is essentially evil. We all make mistakes, and yes, we should be accountable for them, and we should acknowledge that we have done them. But I definitely do not think that you are essentially bad because of what you have done. We are all capable of change, we are all capable of being better. So, if you ever feel like you have been guilty of these things, that is if you align with how I think. Be sorry. I am sorry for a lot of things that I have done in my life, the way that I have treated people because of toxic masculinity, and I try to move forward, I try and be better. And to me, that's the only thing any of us can do. So let's all hopefully work together, let's be constructive. Please feel free to talk to me. You can drop me a direct message, you can meet me in person, you can write comments. The coronavirus is going around, so please take care of yourself. I might actually talk about that the next time I do this. If you like what you viewed and you want me to make more videos, please support me. If it isn't obvious, I don't have a strong following, I don't have a lot of subscribers. So if you like what you see, please try and support me in any way you can. That'd be really appreciated. But if not, take care and be safe, be healthy, and I wish all of you the best. Bye!